Hello and welcome back to another episode of Hear the Cannons. I am your host, Colin Hallboom, and I'm joined by River Wells, Caleb Skinner, and JC Allen, three of my colleagues over at BucsGameday, which, if you don't know, is the only website by Sports Illustrated dedicated specifically to covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Thank you for joining us. Please make sure if you're watching on YouTube, you hit that subscribe button, you hit that like button, you turn the notifications on. And also, if you enjoy listening to this on an audio platform, please make sure to rate and review the podcast through that forum as well. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, make sure you are checking out BucsGameday.com, the only stop you need to stay dialed in and fully knowledgeable of everything going on with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, boys, this is the exact reason why you want to stay tuned in to what we're doing over here at BucsGameday, because three of the hosts on this show, none of them named Colin Hallboom, were in attendance at joint practices today versus the Miami Dolphins. I had to watch like the majority of viewers of this show right now, which was from home, following my Twitter timeline, following all of you guys on Twitter. And it seemed a little like from my uninformed vantage point, it seemed like there was some good stuff going on, maybe compared to what we saw last week. I'm going to throw to you first, River. What was your biggest takeaway from today's joint practice with the Miami Dolphins in Tampa?
It's hot.
It's hot out here.
No, it was definitely hot, but the boys are used to that by now. Definitely a much better day than either of the 2 days against the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is pretty encouraging because in theory, the Dolphins are a better team than the Jacksonville Jaguars. And B, they really needed to have a day like that in joint practice after getting basically cooked in Jax. So definitely some really solid stuff there. I thought it was a pretty good defensive day overall. The Dolphins didn't play a lot of their stars, unfortunately. Boo. But definitely some good plays on the receivers they did have, particularly some standouts that we'll talk about later. But overall, thought it was a really good day.
Now, is anyone aware of how much the starters have played for Miami so far in the preseason, or whether or not they're planning on playing some of those guys this week? JC, are you aware of their plans with that?
So McDaniels was asked that today after practice, and he said we'll see. We'll see what they're gonna, how much they're gonna play. I forget the exact word he used, which was really weird. I can't believe I'm not remembering it, but. If you want to know how many people they've held out, Greg Allman has been tweeting that, so I'm sure he's got that somewhere. I don't have it pulled up, but
no Waddle, no Hill,
right, no
Tyree, no Ramsey,
It's not. We're not going to see Jalen Phillips, I don't think. Probably not Bradley Chubb. So you're kind of looking at what's left over. Ogba, maybe. Mo Kamara, Chop Robinson, those type of guys will probably play, but not the big name.
And Chop Robinson made a play today, I heard, but I also heard Tristan Wirfs bounce back. JC, what jumped out at you today on the field? Anything in particular?
Yeah, I think offensive line play. There were times where the Dolphins got the better of them, but again, no offensive line is going to be perfect. Calais Campbell is a ginormous man. I think I learned that in person. He's a very large human being. He got the best of Graham Barton. On a sack that was eventually called back due to a penalty, but still just kind of ate him up. But then saw him bounce back. Graham Barton bounced back against him later on in the drives, and Cody Malk actually walled him off and bodied him on one play.
Pretty impressed there with Cody in that instance, playing really well against a veteran player.
Yes. So I think the offensive line as a whole, I felt comfortable. We didn't see any like big, chunk runs, those, 4 or 5, maybe 6 or 7, I think. Probably the longest was around 9. I think it was on an outside run, something like that. It wasn't like they weren't breaking long runs, but getting those chunk yardage, which sets you up in that second and third and manageable, what they've been doing in preseason against another opponent with, your starting group out there was really encouraging and something I'm looking forward to kind of seeing that continuity and carry over into Friday. So I think the offensive line for me was something that really stood out as a positive. Negative, the switch to the opposite side of the ball and the defense, the pressure edge, not look strong. And again, they're out most of their guys. But yeah, that was a point where I was like, Vita Vea got his, he's going to get his, but the edge room kind of was lackluster with the backups playing there.
And that's interesting because, last week in Jacksonville, it seemed like the defense was getting torched, except there was a day or two there where the edge group was actually wreaking a little bit of havoc on the Jacksonville O-line. So it's funny how that works. Another reminder not to read too much into this. Like, this isn't even preseason. We're talking about training camp, joint practices. So, but we're trying to get as much info as we can.
Yeah, ATS out too,
Right.
That's going to be a big factor in that for sure. Yeah.
Any updates on that, JC?
As of now, both should be ready to go week 1. I don't think either. I know Yaya's not playing. I don't think JTS will be playing either. Anyone who's dealing with any sort of injury is not going to be playing on Friday, unless you're like one of these guys who are vying to make the roster. But I know Tyke Funderburk will not play. His boot came off today, but he will not play on Friday. So that's really kind of the only update I have as far as some of the younger guys who are nicked up.
While we're on younger guys who are nicked up, Cansey, how's he doing?
Cansey looked good. Came out full pass. We actually talked to Cansey after joint practice, and he specifically said he feels pretty good right now. So I would expect him to be full go week 1, even before that in practice, etc.
Yeah, good because
he didn't have a training camp last year. Remember, he
Right.
got injured right away, so he's been banged up for the last week or so. But I think for the most part, having that training camp really kind of propelled him, and he's one of the ones too, alongside Vito, who got some wins today.
Nice to hear that. Good. Need Cansey full go right away. So, and also let's not forget, you could argue they rushed him back a little bit, came back too soon, and got re-injured. I believe it was versus the Vikings or whoever it was. Might have been
first game of the season versus the Vikings. Yeah,
can't be having that again. Caleb, you got your eyes on a bunch of different stuff today, whether it be someone on the opposition, whether it was the Buccaneers. What stood out to you, man?
So just kind of high level. River was kind of over there watching the defense side of the ball. I was over here with our founder Logan Robinson watching the offensive drills on that portion. So overall, just really the offense looked in rhythm. You saw a lot of targets go to Mike Evans, a lot of targets go to Chris Godwin, which is to be expected. So it's really good to see. You saw some great plays from the guys who are battling possibly for that last wide receiver spot, and Cody Thompson and Cameron Johnson both had really good days. But overall, I think the running game had a good day. I know JC had mentioned it earlier. We weren't seeing them rip off long runs, but those 5 to 9 yard runs are really what you are looking for, especially when it's on those early downs to set up, a 3rd and short moving forward. So being able to see them for the offensive line first and foremost to get pushed, but for the running backs to take advantage of it as well was great to see. And the offense just as a whole looked really, really sharp today.
So Baker's looking good because I know that's what the people want to hear about.
Didn't throw a pick today, to my knowledge.
Baker looked good. Baker looked good. I thought Baker looked good today. He had the rapport between him and Mike and Chris is just on point.
The birthday boy, yeah.
Throw into like only spots. Like his ball placement on the whole has been really good. His ball placement on the whole has been really good so far all camp. He's had some really like dimes to in spots where only his guys can catch it. I think today was another one of those. Today was another one of those examples on a deep 40-yard pass to Cody Thompson in the end zone. He was covered by double coverage, and he hit him right where he needed to come down with a touchdown score. He had another good one to Mike crossing over the middle. Mike kind of did he kind of ran across and then came back, and it was just like boom. It was just right there. Great placement. So Baker's looked fine. I'm not worried about Baker. I'm not worried about Godwin. McMillan looked good on 7-on-7s. He had some good plays. I think the passing game is going to get rolling. I think the running game has looked good, but it's like, all right, it's looked good in spurts before, prove it to me. But I think Baker will have the passing game.
They look comfortable in what they're doing, right? I think that's the most obvious thing that kind of stood out to me is that it wasn't forced or pushed or anything like that. It looks like, hey, we come out here and do this every single day. Let's go out there and do it again. Like it just looked like everything was, falling in line for them, which is what you want, with Baker coming in his second season. So it was great to see. But we did see Baker have a knockdown pass in goal line.
Calais Campbell himself.
With Calais.
6'8" Calais Campbell leaped into the air, putting him at like 8 foot tall. Like, I mean,
That was during 2-point conversion work, I believe, specifically.
Yes, 2-point conversion. Yeah, right on the goal line. Goal line conversion, whatever it was. It was literally at the 1 yard line.
It was on the 2. Yeah.
Well, Bulls would have been kicking it if it was a real game anyway, so no issue there.
It's really unfortunate that you're not wrong, but
he certainly wouldn't take a timeout to think about it. We know that.
In regards to Baker's, JC, what you're saying, I wrote a piece about it about a month ago, just that I think the passing game is really going to take off. A lot of that being the continuity aside, like Liam Cohen sure is new, but like the personnel on the field, there's that level of continuity. What needs to happen and what I want to see from Baker this year is better deep ball accuracy. I think that, and throughout his career, he's been fine in that area. This past season, he was not, and still managed to put together a career year. So if he can really sort that out, then all of a sudden, I think we could really see this offense take a big step forward under Liam Cohen.
Well, quickly compounding off that. Oh, you want to go, Caleb?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much probably going to say what you're going to say is that he's somewhat struggled with that in different portions of training camp, and we've kind of seen that transfer over from last year. So hopefully, that does get corrected, but it's not something that's going to happen overnight.
For sure. And I wanted to just quickly add that in Jacksonville for training camp, there were no splash plays from the Bucs offense. There was really one, and it was a deep ball from Kyle Trask to Trey Palmer, and Todd Bowles said it right because that would have been a sack anyway. There were multiple deep ball connections today. One to Ryan Miller, one to Cody Thompson. You had one to Jalen McMillan, I believe, as well. Had a nice one too. So there were a lot more splash plays, a lot more explosive plays from the offense, and that's a pretty encouraging sign, especially trending towards Baker's deep ball, which, like you said, Caleb, was definitely his biggest weak point last year as a passer.
Which is interesting because it's always been a place where he's really excelled in the past. Like,
he's got a strong arm. He's got one of the strongest arms in the NFL, I think, genuinely.
You look at his numbers with the Browns and with the Rams and even with Carolina, that short stint when he was started there, he's always had really good deep ball numbers. And for whatever reason, last year, and kind of in camp, hasn't been great.
David Arbuckles on YouTube says, "Is Logan Hall going to make the practice squad?"
Is that a troll comment?
He will make the 53-man roster, if that's what you mean. But
he will be your starting 3-4 defensive lineman when they're out in defense. If that's what you're saying, yes, David Arbuckle, whatever.
I guess by extension, that means he could make the practice squad, but I think he'll do slightly better than that.
Yeah. And he was one of the only guys that I was watching because we were all trying to watch. River was mostly watching the defense. Yeah. Caleb was watching the offense. I was trying to watch a little bit of everything. And I moved over kind of when the receivers were doing one-on-ones. We had the Bucs edge rusher, defensive line doing one-on-ones. And there wasn't a lot of pressure there. Let me tell you that. The Dolphins won a fair share of that. Vita Vea got his because he's Vita Vea and he's going to get his. Kalijah Cansey got his as well. Chris Braswell had a couple nice pressures, but Logan Hall had a really nice pressure where he worked his move to the inside, kind of got stopped, and then kind of did a crossover rip type move and got into the backfield. So wasn't a ton of pressure being generated in one-on-ones, which kind of was like translated into what we saw when they got to 11-on-11s, just not a ton of pressure. But Hall had a really, really nice pressure. So.
Now, we had a follow-up question by David Arbuckle. And David, we appreciate you joining us and tuning in, man. Keep those comments coming. But the question here, he wants to know, why is Logan Hall going to make the team? He has done nothing. JC, why don't you follow up with that one and tell us why the Buccaneers believe in Logan Hall so much so that he's a projected starter in that alignment and not just a fringe practice squad guy? Yeah,
so when the Bucs drafted Logan Hall, one of the biggest things they liked about his game was obviously his athleticism and his size. Now, in that 3-4 defense, the 5 tech is the guy on the outside. And really, throughout the course of history, has the 5 tech been a guy to make splash plays. He plays some 4-eye as well, but mostly it's that 5 tech. You got to go back to a guy like Richard Seymour and some of these other guys to really find a dominant 5 tech who's going to be doing all the dirty work, picking up all the run, taking up all the, the extra excess double teams and stuff like that are getting that Vita's working through And he's your lunch pail guy. Now, they liked Logan Hall a lot because of the upside of the athleticism, and hopefully he could be a guy who can be a disruptor in the backfield as well because he's got that speed. He needs to work on his leverage. Everybody knows that. Hasn't been an absolute animal getting to the quarterback, but I still think there's a lot there to work with. And I think I've seen a stronger, faster Logan Hall. I don't know if that's going to translate to games, but I think, to just kind of write somebody off. And again, I mean, think of it this way too. Everyone wants to hate the Logan Hall pick, but Lewis Cine was going to be the pick. And he has done absolutely nothing for the Vikings. Now, it might have been different in Bulls defense, but I mean, hey, pick your poison there.
There's fans in Minnesota who would like to see him cut outright as well. So it's really interesting. You're totally right. I'm glad you brought up Lewis Cine because every time I see his name, I think about that. Like he was going to be the guy, right? He was Bulls' guy.
He was 33. If he was there at 33 instead of 32, he was the pick.
Yeah,
and he's done absolutely nothing, and he's probably going to be out of the league soon.
Now, for anyone who's just joining us on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook or wherever you're watching, we got a couple questions about some roster decisions. We're going to get to that at the end of the show, so hang tight. I will get to some of those questions later, but we're gonna work our way there first. We're gonna stick with chronological order as designed, and I want to talk. We're talking about the Miami Dolphins joint practice. Well, they're going to play an actual preseason game not too long from now. That's Friday evening. I want to know what you guys are going to be focusing on most in this game because it's going to be our first chance to get a glimpse at the starters. For me, it's how much of the starters are we going to see? Is Baker going to play a quarter? Are the ones going to play a quarter? Is it going to be a whole half? Because those guys have gotten no preseason action in thus far. River, please start us off. What are you going to be looking at most when that game kicks off?
Yeah, we're going to get into roster construction, like you said, later in the show. But there are a few positions to where, Todd Bowles has said it a few times actually this week, that there's still a chance for some players to make this team, right? They probably know mostly where they want to go. But starters are going to play. So to start there, probably I would be surprised if it was more than a quarter, if even. But getting into the rhythm of a football game and seeing, a decent, well-put-together drive with good communication, nothing crazy or fancy, but that's going to be priority number one to watch in this preseason game. The starters have not played in preseason yet. And not everyone, is going to be out there, but it's going to be nice to see the core group get out there and play some football and do game time scenarios. So I think that's how Levante David actually phrased it today when he was asked about it. So that's going to be priority number one. And then number two, and we'll get into this later, like you said, Colin, is taking a look at certain groups like, wide receiver or defensive line. It's seeing about how those rotational players kind of get in there and play, and maybe a hint or a key as to where that roster construction could go. So those are the two big things I'd be watching for sure, especially keeping in mind the starters are going to be playing. You're going to want to keep an eye on them, make sure everything goes smoothly. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be amazing, but a smooth, nice drive.
Yeah, execution. It'd be nice to see the team start off well on offense, especially. We talked about that last week, about how this team struggled so much coming out of the gate offensively. It took them almost a whole year before they scored an opening drive touchdown.
They didn't.
I think they did in the second last week of the year. I'm almost positive.
No, they didn't. They didn't score an opening drive possession at all last year.
I'm pretty sure they did.
Money on it. I've got 31 cents right here that says you're wrong. This translates to 25 cents Canadian.
Oh, okay.
We're talking about conversion rates on this podcast.
Yeah. The wrong kind of conversion rates. Okay. Caleb, what are you going to be looking for on Friday, man?
Yeah, I think, above all else, I just want to keep an eye on the injuries, make sure, guys are staying healthy through this matchup, especially with the starters getting their first action. But along with what River said, kind of watching those fringe guys, those guys who are, teetering the line on, are they going to make the roster or are they not? Paying attention to them because it's their last opportunity, at this point of the preseason, of training camp. It's their last opportunity to show that they deserve one of those spots. And Todd Bowles has talked about it, that we're going to have probably more than usual the amount of undrafted players make this team. And that's probably a good thing. But that means that guys who have either been in the league as veterans, whether that's practice squad or on an active roster, are not going to. So it's going to be interesting to see how some of that shapes out. And that's really what I'll be paying attention to.
In the preseason game, though, we're not talking the roster construction yet. We're talking what we're going to see on
I know.
Friday.
I know.
Right.
That's what I'm
They
going to be
go
paying.
hand in hand. Yeah,
Yeah,
They do kind of go hand in hand because I mean that's probably what I'm going to be watching too. As River and Caleb said, I'm looking at those fringe guys to see who's going to set themselves apart. I'm at the spot right now where I don't know if an undrafted guy makes the team.
Ooh.
The way this roster is constructed, I don't know if they do. I've got a couple guys in mind, and we'll talk about them later. But just those guys who are vying for those final spots. It's going to be interesting to not only see them performing on their units, but also special teams. You know that this game more than anything. And again, there's going to be guys who are held out who are going to play special teams. But if you're playing your starters, you're probably giving some special team snaps to them as well, because you want them to get that communication, that subbing in and out on field goals and on punts. That's what Bull said he wants to see, substitution work. So when you're in third and you're an offensive lineman and you're on in punt, but you got to bring in another offensive lineman who's not on, who's a special teamer, or this or that. That's what I want. That's the defensive lineman. Who's going out there? Who's going out there with the starters? Because that tells you who logs the most special team snaps. That will start to tell you kind of the picture of where this roster construction is going to head to. Roster construction. But I also want to see, and again, it's going to be very vanilla, very basic, but I want to see what we've seen so far through the first 2 weeks, especially in the run game. Does that carry over when everyone's out there? Does that carry over when Rashad's touching the ball? Is he picking up 5-6 yards a run? With the interior out there, and now with the tackles both out there, like Bucky and Sean have with the interior intact out there in the first couple drives. That's what I'm kind of looking forward to seeing. I know Baker's going to be able to sling the ball. I'm not worried about that. The running game, what does that look like? Is it the same consistency we've seen when Bucky's back there, when Rashad's back there? I think that's going to be a fun thing to watch. And then, the defense, can they get some pressure? Can they can they pick up where they left off? Can the edge guys get home? Can the interior, is Vita playing? Is Kalijah Hansen? What do they look like working hand in hand now that Kalijah kind of has it under his system? So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for all that stuff like that and some more things, but I'll keep it at that.
Yeah,
Bulls use a timeout.
Yeah.
He's saving them. He's saving them for the regular season. Yeah.
Will McLaughlin bounce back?
Yeah.
McLaughlin, is he gonna get an opportunity? And obviously the big thing, and everyone's watching, and all you guys are watching at home, the long snapper competition. Who gets the majority of the snaps there? Is it Evan Deckers? Is it Zach Schreiner? Everybody's worried.
The world is waiting. Yeah.
JC tried to bait me into a question to ask Bulls about the long snapper.
He didn't even do it for me. He didn't do it.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't ask about a long snapper competition.
I mean, you can do whatever you want, Caleb. You do have free will to ask that question.
It would have been
imagine you're the head coach, right? Like you're talking
Bulls. Bulls would have smirked. He would have been like,
"He's got to think about it. He's got to think about it."
He would have smirked.
It's not that tough of a decision.
We're getting off the rails. Colin, get us back on track.
Are we done here? Are you done, gentlemen?
What are you looking forward to seeing, Colin?
Well, first off, before I discuss mine, I gotta give JC his flowers here because our producer in the back has looked it up. The 2023 Tampa Bay Buccaneers did not score a touchdown or field goal on any first drive of the game. I think what I was thinking of, I think it was
Canadian quarter.
Yeah,
and for the viewers at home, okay. 31 US cents is in fact 42 Canadian cents. So that's where
United US is taking a hit. So you owe me just mail it to me when you're in Detroit for the Detroit game. Save you some costs on shipping.
Will do. And yes, for anyone who doesn't know, I am Canadian. That's why the relentless bullying of the neighbor to the north continues. It's
fine. Just listen closer. You can hear him say a boot sometimes, and it's great.
I'm about to boot you out of here if you don't pipe down. But the thing is, I think last year what it was they didn't score a first quarter touchdown until like the second last game of the year or something. It was definitely
a while.
So I would like to see if our producer can look that up because I want to know about that. But anyway, that ties into what I want to see.
Wrong, but yeah, go continue.
Oh, okay. So I want to see Baker Mayfield in the offense, no matter who they're playing about, like come out and execute and efficiently conduct a couple drives there, and that's what I want to see happen. So it's really funny, man. These guys, you guys are off the rails today.
You don't know how hot it was out there, man. I think we're all got sun poisoning. We're just like, I've been like this all day since I got home. It's just.
I think it's
you are correct. You are correct, Colin. And I think another thing to look out for on top of that is that Graham Barton mentioned this, I think, today, and then Baker Mayfield mentioned this in Jax. The team starts flat. The team comes out and they start flat, and that's also been a problem throughout Todd Bowles' entire tenure as a head coach, and that hasn't really, been addressed perhaps in the way it needs to. So you're totally right on that. You want to see a team come out like the Bucs, the offense, and just score. And that would be really nice for the confidence. It would go a long way in showing. I mean, it's a preseason game, but it would go a long way in showing, hey, we can do this. We can go out and we can punch you in the mouth as a football team, and not, oh, we started flat today, we got to get better. Oh, we started flat next week, we got to get better. We had a
great week of practice.
Exactly. Yeah.
How many times did we hear that? We just got to go out and execute. If they showed it in practice, we got to execute. Like, let's go. Put the pedal to the metal, because as you guys are saying, there's teams where you have to do that. You can't come out flat against the Lions. You can't come out flat against the Niners. You can't come out flat against the Ravens or the Chiefs. The Cowboys, to an extent, if they start to get, they've got a high flying scoring offense. If CeeDee Lamb comes back and they pay him, there's teams where if you come out flat and don't score until drive 3, you're going to be out of the ball game.
Fair. Yeah. No, I think everyone's in agreement there. And I know the fans are too. That's for sure, because that's something you hear about most. I want to track back because we're going to talk now a little bit about the final roster and how that team's going to be constructed and what everyone's been waiting for. I want to fire it off with a question, though, because Bryce Pat 98 watching on YouTube dropped this question earlier in the show. I asked him to be patient, so hopefully he's still watching with us now. And his question was, is Chase Edmonds going to make the roster? And I think it's a good question based on what we've seen from Sean Tucker. I think he's like the most yards per carry of any running back in the NFL through the preseason. I might just be throwing that out there.
If it's not, it's up there. Yeah,
it's up there. Well, do we want to go by starting at quarterback and kind of give our thoughts on how many you're going to make that, and then jump to running back after?
Well, we're going to answer this question because I said we're going to, JC, and then we can go position by position after that. Gotcha. But we've already brought up Bryce Pat's question here, so I want someone to take that. All right, I'm a man of my word. That's something very Canadian about me, bro.
I think ultimately it'll be interesting to see what happens because, as mentioned, Sean Tucker is really impressed this preseason. He has looked really sharp, really quick. Picking up his blocking and his blocking schemes has looked good. And then you throw in the new kickoff rules, and that comes into play as well because they have looked to use running backs in that situation as it's just kind of an extended running play. Get speed on the field, be able to make a man miss, and you could be gone for a touchdown for an explosive play. So you can see them carrying maybe one more running back than they usually do, but it's a tight battle there. Really, I mean, we haven't seen Chase probably for the majority of training camp. So it's really hard to gauge that. We saw him be injured last year, but he came on strong towards the end of the season. So nice cat, JC. But anyways, yeah. I don't know. I think it's kind of going to be between him and Sean for that third running back spot. And, Sean's been making some waves when Chase has been sidelined. So that's probably one of the more interesting, not position battles, but position groups to kind of examine on how many guys they're going to take into the regular season.
The other interesting thing is Chase Edmonds, throughout the course of his career, I mean, he's made a good career for himself, and that's as a change of pace third down back who can pass protect a little bit and who can catch the football. Well, Bucky Irving can catch the football. Rashad White can catch the football. Sean Tucker's a little more of a ground and pound type of player. So you've also got to consider that. So like I personally, if it were up to me, I want to see those younger guys out there. No disrespect to Chase Edmonds, but I mean, that's where I would side. River, you have something to add to that?
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree. I would say I think I think they're going to go probably White, Irving, and Tucker. And the worst thing you can do in camp, be you a veteran or be you a rookie or a young player, is be hurt during camp, because that's time that you're not that's time that you're not showing what you can do, and you're not playing and you're not competing. And so if there's no tape or there's no film, and another guy like John Tucker's busting off like 8 yards a carry, well, then that's unfortunate. So I think that's probably the direction that it's trending in. Yeah.
Now, all right, JC, you want to do this positionally, so we'll do this positionally.
I'll give my Chase Edmonds takes when we get to running back.
Well, we're on running back, so let's just finish it up.
Oh, we're skipping quarterback?
I'm saying
we're gonna go back. Okay, yeah. Chase Edmonds, probably the strongest pass protector on the team. But again, can't make the club from the tub, best ability is availability. He hasn't been there. And it's not like this is an isolated thing. Last year he was injured a lot as well. With that allows the opportunity for other people to step up and assert themselves and try to take roles. I think ultimately they keep 3 running backs, and I think the 3 that were listed are as follows. I think Tucker's going to be number 3. I think Tucker still has some stuff to show as a pass protector. I think he's showed so far that he can be a guy that can do some damage out of the backfield. As Caleb alluded to, he's kick returner too. So when it's back there, it's Bucky and it's Sean Tucker. And Sean Tucker also is the fastest running back on the team. We've seen that with some of his bursts and explosions. So, last year, ultimately, Tucker was behind the ball, dealing with his heart issue and kind of having to get, late, missing all of OTAs and minicamp. He hit the ground running. And it looks like he's going to, firmly cement himself as RB3 on the roster. And again, there'll probably be different situations where they want him out there with this speed. And I expect all 3 of them to get a little bit of run, but I think only 3. Chase Edmonds could be on injured reserve to start the year, or he could end up going to the practice squad. Has been injured. We don't know what it is. Asked people. They're not at liberty to say. I've asked him. He's not going to say. So it's a mystery injury. So we'll figure out what it is and maybe IR practice squad.
I mean, a lot of Buccaneers injuries are mystery injuries. I've learned.
Oh my God, Ryan Jensen. That was...
Don't get me started on that. Like, we had to wait a year to find out what happened, and then that's just crazy. But anyway, let's talk about the quarterback position then. All right, what's going to happen with John Wolford? Is Kyle Trask locked in as the backup? I mean, River, why don't you tell us how you see the quarterback position shaking out?
I think Kyle Trask will be the backup, particularly because
bias. And then
I'm never going to beat these allegations, am I? No, I think both have had their ups and downs, definitely during camp. But I think Trask has been better than Wolford. Wolford had a bit of a rough go of things, and then of course, unfortunately, he got deleted in the backfield in that Jacksonville game. Really unfortunate, but I think he's gonna. I think that he wants to play, from what I understand, in this preseason game, which is encouraging. And good that he can recover and bounce back so fast. So, but I think Trask will be the second quarterback. I don't know what exactly you do with Wolford, because they initially had him on the practice squad last year, and then he basically leveraged his way into a 53-man roster spot because the Rams were interested in picking him up. For any who remember that, yeah. So I don't know, because you can be the emergency quarterback as if you're on the 53 and inactive. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what their intention is with that. He'll probably clear waivers if he is released and brought back in the practice squad, but we'll see where that goes. Trask, I think, is definitely QB2.
Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer. But John Wolford, didn't he block an opportunity to get picked up because he wanted to stay in Tampa on the practice squad? So
yes,
is that
on the 53, not on the practice squad? He got promoted. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so the Rams wanted to pick him up when Stafford went down to be the starter for them because he had experience in the offense. There was another team that wanted him as well, but he turned both of them down because he wanted to be in Tampa. He said, he's got long-term plans of staying in Tampa. Trask gets number 2. I think he goes to the practice squad. I think he's fine there. He's going to get a nice check. I think they get close to $500,000 to be on the practice squad. If it comes in, they have to lift him, bring him up to the 53, much like last year. I think they'll be fine doing that. And if it doesn't and they make the playoffs, he'll certainly get bumped up, to get those playoff checks like some of the guys did last year. So I'm with River, 2 on the team. I think you don't need any more than that. You're going to need more bodies at other positions.
Now, I think every year, and we're going to move along to the wide receiver position. I think that is
the fun one.
It's the most intriguing conversation every year because you always got these guys, whether it be late round draft picks, whether it be undrafted free agents, free agent acquisitions. There's tons of competition because there's a bunch of spots. So first off, the question is, how many receivers are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going to keep on the roster? Caleb thinks the number is 6. River signs that same number. So if we're talking about 6, we got, I guess, 5 locked in. So that's a lot of guys. You think 4
locked in for sure.
4.
Okay,
I would say 4.
I think maybe so. You got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Trey Palmer, Jalen McMillan.
Yep, that's the 4.
And I think Rock is like a half. I think he's like a half.
So,
I don't know. That's gonna be fun.
And we're talking Rock. When we say Rock, we're talking about Raheem Jarrett. Who's a very talented player who didn't see the field last year, but they've kept him around and they're very happy with what he brings to the table.
A little bit. He started to come on the game that he got injured against the 49ers. He had that big long reception,
and he's hurt right now a little bit too. So,
but he's a big time talent. He's a big time talent. Like physically, he's got all the tools. And
I like Raheem Jarrett. Yeah.
Yes. So then you got these other guys: Cameron Johnson, Cody Thompson, Sterling Shepard. They brought in to for Baker Mayfield. Well. Yeah. That's a lot of guys battling for potentially one spot. So JC, these guys both said there's going to be 6. How many do you predict the Buccaneers keep, and who do you think it is? Who's gonna make the team at that wide receiver position?
Yeah, I got 6. I think Evans, again, like we said, those are the locks. I got Raheem Jarrett. What?
I'm kidding.
I think Raheem Jarrett is another one. And then it comes down to that final battle, right? Sterling Shepard was brought in, but from the moment he was signed, we talked about this. He's not a guy that's going to play special teams, And maybe with the new rules, you don't need him to play special teams, and you can go with another cornerback or another Raheem Jarrett, or make one of the rookie or young guys play special teams. But he's been injured now the last 2 weeks. And, I don't think he's the type of guy who's going to say, you know what, I'll be on the practice squad. He was content with retiring. So, I think he's probably not going to make this team just because, again, can't make the club from the tub. Ryan Miller is interesting. I think let's get rid of the guys who aren't going to make it. Cephas Johnson III, Latrell Jones, thanks for playing. Tanner Canoe, sorry. Rally Webb, same thing. I think you're looking at Cameron Johnson. I think you're looking at Ryan Miller. And I think you're looking at Cody Thompson as those 3 guys who could potentially make that final spot. And you can make cases for all of them. Ryan Miller's been very consistent all throughout camp, going back to OTAs as a receiver, catching the ball, purely as a receiver, making that switch from tight end. Cameron Johnson's banged up, but today he put on a clinic. He put on an absolute show. You can see the explosiveness out of him. He's like Devin Tompkins, but more explosive and bigger. He's not like 5'8", 180. He's like, 5'10", almost 200. And you've seen a lot from him. And then Cody Thomas is a guy who was signed with Sterling Shepard, and everyone's like, who the heck is that guy? Who cares? But he's a veteran. He's a core special teamer. And he's really showed up the last 2 games in not only just the stat sheet, but the way he's aggressive in run support, when he's got a block out there on the outside, and also when he's asked to play special teams. So for me, it comes down really to Cameron Johnson and Cody Thompson. That's the biggest one I'm watching this week on Friday to see who's going to kind of edge it out. But I have Cody Thompson edging out Cameron Johnson right now.
I'll go on the opposite side of that. I think it's going to be Cameron Johnson. I
think Cam's going to make it. I think Cameron's going to make it. Yeah.
Too dynamic. But either way, it's nice to see they got guys battling for that final spot. And I'm sure the Buccaneers will be happy with whomever they take moving forward. Did you want to weigh in quickly, Caleb, before we move on to the next position group on which guy you think nabs that spot? You said there'd be 6. So are you assuming is Rock Jarrett got that 5th spot in your mind, and then it's sort of between those 2 guys like JC laid out for us, or is there?
It's hard to tell with Rock, right? Because he's been injured a lot, so you didn't really see a whole lot last year. He did have a good game, and then he's had some splash plays here in training camp. Looks really, really good, like a guy who could back up.
He might have had the catch of training camp. Jarrett.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I was kind of going with that. So he can go up, get the ball. He possesses these physical elite abilities to be able to locate the ball when it's in the air, especially in short yardage situations or when you got to throw it up. But yeah, I guess you could kind of go ahead and slot him into that 5th position because you still want to see, kind of where that ceiling is with him before you give up on him ultimately. So I think it comes down to that one roster spot, and those two guys that JC and all of us and the whole media have been mentioning. Fighting for that last spot has been Cameron Johnson, the undrafted rookie, and then Cody Thompson, the veteran. So both of them are different players. So it's really what you look at. I mean, I think Cameron Johnson, you can slot in a multitude of different positions and use him in a different variety of ways that you're going to get more out of him than you possibly would Cody. But Cody does have that veteran ability. He knows what the NFL is about. So it's tough. They both made great plays today. A lot of what we saw from Cam today was underneath stuff, but he's taking that underneath ball and taking it, 10 yards or more. And then for Cody, he's catching these intermediate routes that look good. Caught a beautiful deep ball from Kyle Trask today, where the defender was all over him for a touchdown. So it's just it's going to be fun to watch those. And like JC said, on Friday, that'll be probably a very big point of emphasis to see who kind of drags that away from the other.
I will say too, just Rakim, whereas I think he's more of a lock, is because if something happens to Mike, I think you can replace him with Rakim and Trey Palmer in the aggregate, and you're not going to do that with a guy like Cody Thompson.
Moneyball style.
Right. You're not going to be able to do that, but with Rakim you can. And then as far as, Cam Johnson's availability on special teams, he's more of a returner type than like a core guy. So I think that's where I give the edge to Cody, because he can play on those core units and wrap up the wide receiver position.
Okay. All right. Now, always intriguing. The wide receiver position group. I feel like that's for most NFL franchises. So I'm glad we got that one out of the way. That was good conversation.
On the roster too.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about the tight end group, because this is a position that is extremely shallow on this team. I'm sorry, but that's just an objective fact at this point. Cade Otton's penciled in as a starter. He's going to get a ton of usage this year, I think, maybe even a little bit of a fantasy sleeper. But beyond him, Payne Durham is hurt, right? Second-year tight end out of Purdue. He's back?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So but he's fine. He's full go right now?
Yeah, he'll be fine.
Awesome. Okay, so Payne Durham is fine.
He might not play, but he'll be fine for week one.
Yeah. Okay. So Payne Durham, well, that's good. News to me. Devin Culp, 7th round pick. Lots of questions about him. Speedster, fastest tight end in the draft. And then you got O'Keefe. And we've all been noticing the usage of those two guys. They've had Devin Culp out there a lot. O'Keefe not touching the field till the second half. I feel like maybe even in both games. So that's interesting. Him presenting as though he's behind Culp in the pecking order. Maybe you're reading too much into that. But that's 4 main guys right there. Mm-hmm. How many tight ends are going to make this team? And is Devin Culp or O'Keefe, is it going to be one of them? What do we see happening there, River?
This is tough. I could see them going either way with 3 or 4. The thing about this is that, Dave Canales, when he was offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, there was a lot of 12 personnel, 2 tight ends. Sometimes he had some weird jumbo packages. So guys like O'Keefe, who are blocking tight ends, made a lot of sense in that sort of offensive scheme. Liam Cohen runs a lot of 11 personnel, as is the way of the Sean McVay Rams sort of school of thought. And with that, that sort of appeal for a blocking tight end or a fullback in certain packages kind of is less important. So in that case, I would say probably Culp over Keith. They kept 3, but they might keep 4 because, again, special teams is very important going into this year, as it is with any team. And Keith could still find himself useful in that instance, particularly with the new kickoff rules. It's kind of like a run blocking sort of style of a thing. So he could find some usage there. So I wouldn't be surprised if they kept 4 or 3. It really, and that sounds silly, but it really is weird. I'm curious to see where they go. But if they go 3, I'd probably take Culp, but I don't know if they will. They might go 4.
Yeah, I think O'Keefe's going to get cut. I think he's done. JC, what do you think?
Yeah, I thought that too.
Yeah.
But recent discussions have led me to think that they might keep 4 and O'Keefe might be there.
Okay.
I think Culp has him beat for 3, as River said, and as David Arbuckle meant, he's kind of that's that hybrid tight end receiver, is that guy, move tight end is what they call him, the move tight end who can line up outside and stuff like that. Yeah. Where Culp has really impressed me is his blocking. He's shown out a lot, especially blocking in space. He's not one of these top tier inline guys, never will be, but like in space, he's really impressed me there. The speed is certainly there. There's a couple plays where if Trask had better ball placement, we'd be talking about him having 20 to 30 yard grabs down the field. He's really impressed me, but I think they keep 4 because of what River alluded to, the special teams value of Keith, and that's where I got them.
Yeah, River, I think you kind of explained.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think you explained that really well, River. So I think that's good. That's good there. I want to now talk about the offensive line because that's going to be an engine for this football team, especially if they want to establish the run. That's all this talk. Liam Cohen's offense, new running backs in the building, looking good. So everything's kind of predicated on the offensive line, and I think that's fair to say. First off, Graham Barton, as first reported by our very own JC Allen, declared as the starter. Not a surprise, but our guy still got you the news. So credit where it's due. And then Ben Bredesen as well, named the starting left guard. So that shores up the offensive line. With the Sua Opeta injury, the Bredesen news is not surprising in the least.
Right.
I think it's nice to know that those guys, even before the preseason has concluded, know who that group is. I think there's something to be said about that. I also like the idea of Robert Hainsey being a valuable backup now. Hopefully they're going to kind of cross-train him back at guard a bit in case Bredesen were go down, because I feel like he's our most valuable depth piece there. But
for sure.
Yeah, but I
think we're really looking at 2 players here, and that's Brandon Walton versus Luke Haggard. I think the depth is set for them now. The biggest question is either those 2, which rounds out whether you think 9 or 10. If you think 10, obviously both of them probably make it. But if you think they're only keeping 9, it's like either or. And then I think the mystery question or the hypothetical is, what if someone calls you and offers you like a 4th rounder or a 3rd rounder, or maybe not a 3rd rounder, but like a 4th round pick or a 5th round and some change, or a depth player for Hainsey? Says, hey, look, we have a spot at center that we need. He's not going to do well at guard. I can tell you. He can cross train all he wants. He does not have the anchor. He does not have the play strength.
Right, and that's fair. And it is tempting to get those picks, but I think the depth in the defensive line in general is really thin. So
not to mention the interior, center, like Cody Malk 1 season. Bredesen's been a reserve the majority. Actually, that's not true. He started a fair bit in New York, but he's been a reserve plenty. And then you got a rookie at center. So that depth along the interior is valuable with a guy like Hainsey, who could step in and start right away at center. We're not saying he could. Okay, but guys, you can't say he can't be a serviceable backup at guard. Some people might argue Bredesen is a backup. I get he's stronger. All that stuff.
Would be the first one in at guard.
But he's played tackle most of his career as well. So you're forecasting a position change there also.
He's played all over the place, though. He's played interior and outside.
Fair, but he's played a lot more outside. And I know they're trying to kick him inside more. And I think he's probably better suited there. But correct. I'm just saying the same theory applies there. Like you're saying Hainsey can't do it, but you haven't seen him really try, right? He was a tackle. He was a guard before. He does have versatility. So the point is, though, he's an excellent.
From what I've been told, and from what I know, the Bucs would have loved to, in a perfect world, would have loved for Hainsey to be the center and for Barton to be the guard this year. They would have loved that, but they are not getting enough from him up the middle because he's too light. Doesn't anchor well. He gets pushed around. He's never going to win this competition. This was a competition to get Barton ready and to keep someone breathing down his neck. Barton was the guy from day 1. As soon as they drafted him, they wanted to get bigger. They talked about getting bigger up the middle. Hainsey doesn't give you that. He's very smart, and there's ways of covering up, but he's not going to be the guy at guard. They're going to put someone bigger than him in there at first. I think if you can get valuable assets for him, you have Bredesen who can play center in a pinch. If something happens to Barton, Elijah Klein's look good. You got Walton, probably the first guy in anyways. You got Haggard on the practice squad who look good as well. I think if you can get something for Hainsey, it's something that you kind of have to listen to. You don't just, no, we like our depth and hang up the phone. Again, because there's going to be guys that are going to be cut and on waivers, and you never know. Maybe some guys like, hey, we got a plethora of guard depth. Here's a 5th round pick in our guard depth for your starting set, for a starting center for us.
Elijah Klein has looked a lot better than I thought he would in the preseason for sure. He's made some good plays and made some good movement, so that's encouraging.
Does he make Hainsey expendable when you have a guy who can play center in Bredesen and you can move a guy around? This is supposed to be a quick position group. My bad.
Yeah, but no, like that's fair what you're saying, and I mean that's a totally reasonable take to have. I just what I'm saying is we don't have to discredit the fact that as it stands currently, the Buccaneers have one of the better backup centers in the NFL. You could argue potentially, and that I think is something that's worth noting when we're discussing the depth and roster construction of this position group. So we'll leave it at that then, and I want to flip over to the defensive side of the ball. Let's keep it in the trenches. Talk about the D line, okay? Who is there anyone who fans might be surprised to see left out of there? Is it all pretty predictable? I mean, I was a little curious. I want to talk about Will Golston because he was in there in the fourth quarter playing like in the second half of both of these preseason games. And I tweeted about it. I love that, like whatever. But then it kind of makes you pause for a minute and you're like, does that mean we've seen the last of Will Golston? Like they're running this guy out there? Or is it just because he's such a dog, he needs to be out there? So River, what are your thoughts on that one?
This is interesting. I feel like I start off every single depth conversation with that exact phrase because I think receiver is probably the one that's most intriguing. But really, all of these sort of battles are pretty interesting. Golston being out there for that long is intriguing, and they have guys like Mike Green was there last year, and until he got hurt. So he's been there. Judge Culpepper's been in there. He's been occasionally doing this and that. So. I don't know. I'm not convinced quite yet they're going to get rid of Golston, only because I think Todd Bowles definitely loves his veterans and he likes that sort of experience. I think he values that particularly. Particularly a player like Golston. Now, he has a lot of young players on his squad, let's not forget. But when it comes to that sort of thing, especially as a defensive guy, I think Golston might be pretty valuable there. But it's a worthy question to ask. It's interesting. I wouldn't be surprised necessarily if we saw that Will Golston had gotten cut, but I'm just not quite ready to say, I think that's going to happen. But definitely watch out for it and see how long he plays in this preseason game against the Dolphins.
I think if there's one of the surprise cuts of a veteran that they cut and comes back on the practice squad, it would be Will Golston.
That's not a bad take either, yeah.
I think that's one of those things where, like, all right, they cut Will Golston, and then we hear they're bringing him back on the practice squad.
I think that could ultimately be the most likely scenario.
And because I don't think he's like passed through waivers because of how he's got the veteran services. For me, it's like Mike Green made the roster last year after making the practice squad the year before as just a tryout guy, but he hasn't shown anything in camp. And when you talk to Bowles, the two names he mentioned are CJ Brewer and Ernest Brown. Those are the two guys that I'm going to watch very closely this camp. This final game to see kind of which either one of these guys stand out. I know everyone's talking about, I can finally say his name thanks to the broadcast, Lual Uguak. He had that sack last week, and Culpepper too is a guy who he hasn't really shown me anything, Judge Culpepper. I haven't been impressed when he's in there. Brandon Matterson's going to be cut Saturday morning, so we don't even talk about him. He's the guy that signed on Monday. But I think, again, if there's a surprise cut on the veterans, Will Golston wouldn't shock me. But I think he'd come back on the practice squad. So CJ Brewer, Ernest Brown, the guys I'm looking at. Maybe Mike Green a little bit too, see if he can salvage his camp. But those are the three guys I'm watching for this. And I think they probably keep – this is one where I'm not sure if they keep 5 or 6 guys. I think 5 maybe if they want to keep.
It's probably an area where you could go a little lesser. I think
so too, especially because how much they're going to play nickel and dime.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to take it back a level, Caleb. I'm going to throw this to you. Your boy, Florida State alum, Kalen DeLoach. Is he going to make this team, man, as an undrafted free agent, you think? And
that's a good question.
Yeah, and anyone else chime in about how he's looked so far as well for anyone who's been at home.
It's interesting. It's a numbers game, really. I feel like when it comes to the linebacker position group. But the thing with Kalen throughout camp so far is that he hasn't really, been a big splash guy, which is kind of what he was able to do in his last season at Florida State, is make big plays when they needed him most or whatever. But he has been super consistent. You haven't really seen his level of play drop off. He has consistently played at the level since he's gotten into the NFL. I personally think he has a great shot to make it. That's not just being a homer. I see what he's able to do. They use him a lot on special teams. We've seen him be, one of the first linebackers on the field, if not the starter thus far through preseason. So, obviously Todd Bowles likes what he's seeing from him, and he kind of fits that mold. And he's a smaller guy, but the guy knows ball and he loves ball. So it's another one of those situations to where if the numbers work out, yeah, he makes the roster. But at the end of the day, do you bring him back and put him on the practice squad because those numbers don't work out?
Right. I think his final boss is. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, JC.
I was just going to say it depends on 4 or 5, right? Last year they came into the season with 4 guys. Mm-hmm. They ended up bringing up Russell, and they finished the season with 5 guys. So it's kind of, what do they take? He's had some really good practices where he's been out there with the ones, and then the preseason game hasn't kind of, like Caleb said, made those splash plays, and it's kind of on the wrong side of things week 1, with a mental error. And but I think for him, his saving grace is he's played a ton of special team snaps. Like JJ Russell's playing the most. He's tied with JJ Russell for the most on defense. And because of his speed and athleticism, his 2 biggest traits, those are probably going to help him, I think, stick around if they do try to keep him. I think Vi Jones has had a really strong camp and played well in games, more so in games than Kalen. But I think special teams, he's played more, and his ability to use that speed athleticism with the new kickoff changes gives him the edge. I have them keeping 5 right now, and I have them keeping Kalen DeLoach as the 5th linebacker on the roster. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to mention J.J. Russell's the guy to look at when it comes to this. 'Cause, I mean, huge special teams player, really reliable player in preseason, makes tackles, gets to the ball. He's about as strong in that area of the year as anybody for, a 4th or 5th linebacker. So, how they approach, I think they're definitely keeping J.J. Russell, but how they approach that sort of thing, like you said, JC, 4 or 5, and where you need to go from there. If it's 4, then that might be tough. If it's 5, then Kalen's got a good shot over Vi Jones. I agree.
I think the defense on the defensive side, the 5-6 for lineman, the 4-5 for linebacker, the 5-6 for outside linebacker, then even cornerback. I think those are the hardest ones right now to kind of battle down. Offense, it feels like it's a little easier. You have maybe 1 or 2 position battles. On defense, it's like, how do they want to construct it per the new kickoff rules, and where they want those types of bodies on certain things. And it makes it really difficult this year to kind of predict, where you're going to keep extra bodies at.
Do you think something for like a Kalen DeLoach, who, we've talked about him through, training camp practices and things of that notch, but when it comes to game time, we don't talk about him. Is it, do you think that's like, obviously it's not great. You want to hear your name be talked about during games, but like, if you just play okay and you're not like on the coach's radar of doing something, horribly wrong on the field during a game, but also just doing your job, how does that like translate? Is that like a better thing for him, or
it's not always going to be in a position to make the play or make the tackle, right? It's what were you doing your assignment on the other side of the field? If the ball did you show good pursuit and everything like that. The thing with Kalen too is I don't know. Remember when we watched The Current, Larry Foote was the one that called him and told him they were signing him. This is a guy that the Bucs were really high on. And when you're having your defensive coordinator call him, that there was competition for him. So that's a thing too. Are they going to be able to get Kalen through? Maybe that's one of these scenarios where we see, okay, Will Golson is cut, right? So they can keep Kalen on, let people kind of fill their roster. Cause it's a madness. And then the next couple of days, you're able to kind of sneak guys back on the practice squad or whatnot. Is it a case like that? But does he, he's one of those things like, does he get picked up on waivers if he's cut? Like, you got to kind of keep that in mind too, because there was a lot of buzz and interest in him as an undrafted free agent, and the Bucs got him.
One guy, if I'm a onlooker, before we move on from the linebacker position, Servassier Dennis, he's a guy I don't hear much about from the people tweeting about.
He's been hurt
down on the field. But even like
he can't stay healthy. He just can't stay healthy.
But like, even I'm just, since they drafted him, like I feel like he's there and they're high on him, but then you don't hear anything about him. I'm just curious, could a guy like that ever be at risk of them being like, okay, we haven't seen enough, he's always hurt, they're fully believing in him still?
I think they like him a lot, actually. and they think he'll be a part of some packages. But like Caleb said, and JC mentioned too, he hasn't been healthy really his entire time here. He's constantly been battling something. He's in a black non-contact jersey today, so he's slowly coming back from something. But he's had a lot of issues with that.
Fair, yeah. Now, JC, I'm going to pass this position group to you. I want us to dive into the secondary before we get out of here. We're nearing on an hour. There's a boatload of corners in competition to make this team. Can you kind of run us through your projections, if you're willing to share them, if you have them, or just kind of talk us through the biggest decisions that are to come for this front office in regards to the cornerback position?
Yeah, before I do that, I think we're all in agreement. Probably all 6 outside linebackers make the team.
Yeah.
You guys have Marquise Watson, Jose making it?
Yeah.
Yep. Especially after last week.
Yeah, I've got all 6 making it too. So I think they'll go heavy on that position. But the corner's an interesting spot because I think you got to break this up into almost the whole secondary is probably broken up into 3 different groups, right? And you have your cornerbacks, Jamel and Zion McCollum, they're your starters. Bryce Hall's not going anywhere. And you have this interesting 3-way battle for that 4th spot on the outside. That potentially could see them keep 2 rather than just 1. But you have Josh Hayes who's making that move from safety nickel to the outside this season. He's looked okay at times. He's got burnt at times, a la T. Higgins. But again, we're talking about a guy who's getting burnt by T. Higgins, who's played primarily special teams last year. Speaking of that, led the NFL in special teams tackles, even got a Pro Bowl vote or All-Pro vote, rather. So he's kind of cemented himself as one of the up-and-coming special teamers in the league. But then you've got guys like Keenan Isaac, who's made plays and consistently been in the right areas, sound in his assignment football. And Tyreek Thunderberg, who just got hurt last week, but has shown a lot, starting in rookie minicamp, going all the way through mini OTAs, mandatory minicamp, and even throughout the preseason. So kind of like you've got this weird little 3-way battle right there happening. I think Josh Hayes ultimately gets it, but it wouldn't surprise me to see them maybe keep 1. Maybe they keep 4 linebackers and they keep another outside cornerback if they don't think they can get both Keenan Isaac and Tyreek Thunderberg through the practice squad, through waivers of the practice squad. So I think, you've got your 3 locked in. And then if we're talking strictly outside, you move it inside, it becomes a kind of different conversation.
Yeah. Well, let's have that conversation if we're talking about the inside. I mean, obviously you got Christian Izien, Tyke Smith, right? Those are the guys going to be competing for the snaps in the nickel. Is there anyone else? Right. Sorry. Tavierre Thomas, who they brought over as a free agent. Yeah. So, like, how many guys do you think realistically they're gonna take who they expect to maintain? Just the two guys? Like, is one of those guys getting cut?
I think they'll probably take, unless you think differently, JC. I think they'll go Tyke Smith, Christian Izien, and Tavierre Thomas. I think will probably.
I think Tavierre has the ability to play outside too.
And they're cross training him at safety as well.
So the thing is, for me,
variability.
It's like, is this a situation where Tavierre is fine going to the practice squad, or at least to start, so you can either sneak a guy like Tyreek Thunderberg or Keenan Isaac?
Thunderberg being hurt does not do wonders for his chances.
It doesn't, but also it's like kind of the same thing. Like, I think he's done enough, and we also have to remember the waivers game too, right? So, like, who do you protect? Like, as a 6-year veteran, Tavierre, I don't think has to go through waivers. So you can cut him, and he goes right to the practice squad.
Yeah.
Or you kind of then you flip-flop them after a week, and everyone's kind of – because remember, if you sign someone from the practice squad, they've got to be on your team for 3 weeks, Or if you claim them on waivers, subsequently, I think once the season starts, I think once you claim someone, they have to be on your team for a certain amount of period before you can cut them. You can't pick them up on waivers and cut them the next day, So it's one of those things where I think they keep all 3. I think Keenan and Tyreek end up on the practice squad. But if they felt like they needed to get one of those guys in, Tavierre Thomas to me is the guy that they cut, because I think Izien would be scooped up by another team in a heartbeat.
For sure.
Well,
River, how do you
recently, right? Christian?
Yeah, he's not going to play. He's a little banged up. He's nicked up, but I think he makes a team. There's just no way.
He showed enough last year.
Yeah, and I think we'll see certain situations where him and Tyke are on the field at the same time. And then the safety room, I think, is locked up too. Whitehead, Winfield Jr. are your starters, and Kayvon Merriweather has shown enough.
Big time. Done. Yep.
I like
Chad Wisdom.
Kayvon Merriweather deserves a shout out, man. He was flying around last game. Like he looked fantastic. He was popping off.
That's a good depth piece to have, I think, for sure.
You know what? And just because he didn't just because he didn't get to do everything at Iowa in that Kirk Ferentz system doesn't mean he's not capable. I'm pretty high on him as a prospect. I think he's got some potential too. I like him.
Games last year.
He's a bit longer too for like a safety, which is it's good to see him be able to move like that at his size from the safety position.
Yeah. All right, now, guys, everyone, the moment you've been waiting for. I know this entire podcast when we announced
it's going to be Zach Schreiner.
Ross, come on, I was building it up. The long snapper competition. Do you guys have the veteran Zach Schreiner or the young upstart Graham Barton's former teammate at Duke, Evan Deckers, winning the long snapper competition?
He does have the Duke. The Duke connection's underrated. Duke connection. Maybe Graham Barton's going in for his guy. He's like, no, that's the guy.
I'm gonna snap if he doesn't snap.
It'll be Schreiner. I feel like that's
probably Schreiner. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Schreiner too.
I think they probably want to stick with the guy they know can do it and has done it for several seasons.
You don't mess with the good thing.
Yeah, keep training that son of yours though. That's what you got to teach him, JC. How to snap, long snap.
Yeah.
Okay, you should be
good money doing it.
Yeah, I mean, even you get like 1.3 million a year. I mean, still after taxes, that's right around 900,000 after agent fees and stuff like that. It's not bad to live on.
Even more in Canadian, buddy.
Even more Canadian. Full circle. We've come full circle.
That's it. Speaking of full circle, we've come full circle with the show. We've talked about the joint practices versus the Dolphins. We've teed up the preseason game on Friday, thankfully the last preseason game, and we're going to get a chance to see a bunch of the ones, including that offense led by Baker Mayfield and co. take the field. So that'll be nice on Friday. I know fans are looking forward to that. And we went through every position group, but JC has more to say, so I know what that look means.
Well, before we leave, too, you're talking about the game on Friday. I want everyone to make sure me, River, and Caleb will be there, and we'll give you guys instant reactions afterwards. So make sure, turn those notifications on and reminders on, because we'll have the three of us, and maybe even Colin will run it from backstage. Who knows? I don't know how we're going to do this. It's all brand new to me, but we'll be doing an instant reaction piece live on the field after the game. So definitely check it out.
For sure. Stay dialed, stay connected. Make sure you're following us on YouTube. You're subscribed. You got the notifications on, like JC said. And please don't be afraid to rate and review us on your audio streaming services as well, whether that's Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever it may be. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Hear the Cannons, which is run through BucsGameday, Sports Illustrated's only website dedicated specifically to covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We are plugged in. We've got multiple people down there at One Buccaneer Place every day, and that goes on all season long. So you know where you need to be if you want to know what's going on with the Tampa Bay Bucs. Till next time, go Bucs.